welcome to another edition of the Wealthy Boss Show. Now today I'm doing something a little bit different. As you can see, normally on the Wealthy Boss Show episodes you see my face, but today I wanted to provide some really practical training on a tool that I use to help me get organized in my business and in my personal life. Now, I use one tool to kind of keep all the trains running, and the reason for this is because we only have one life. Now, what often makes us feel so overwhelmed is when we have all these things coming at us from our businesses and our personal chore lists and our relationships and our families. And if we work a day job on top of that, that can just start to get really overwhelming. So if you are skating by right now on Post-it notes and all these separate to-do lists on separate notebooks, then as much as I'm a pen and paper girl myself when it comes to either reading physical paper books or doing kind of longer term strategy and planning, I hope by the end of this mini training that I have convinced you to go digital with something like Trello. So Trello is my favorite software for task management. It's really robust. It comes in both a desktop version and an app version. And I'm actually going to show you today how I personally keep all those trains running and do it in such a way that helps me feel more organized and less scattered. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to say that kind of the foundation for how I do all of my to-do lists and have them feed into everything and really just organize what needs to happen on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, etc., is I actually do a quarterly planning retreat. Every quarter-ish. I call it my quarterly planning retreat. Sometimes I only get 3 done in a year. But I make regular time to carve out the next 90 to 100 days of what needs to happen. So I actually follow Chalene Johnson's Smart Success program for this. So that's I'm a big fan of hers. If you wanted to get really serious about getting planned and organized and really making sure that your goals line up with your vision of what your life wants to look like. Just a little, FYI, that's largely what I use to really lay the foundation for my organization strategy. But I've come up with a lot of things on my own too that have been really helpful, which is what I'm going to share with you today. So that being said, let's first take a look at all the different feeder to-do lists that roll into my weekly list. Okay, so when it comes to Trello, you're just looking at my main top level board right now. But if you take a look back, you see I have all these different boards, but also all these different organizations. So Trello lets you create as many different organizations as you want, which I think is fantastic because this really allows you that flexibility, as I mentioned before, to bring all of your disparate worlds together into one management platform. Now, what I mean by, What I mean by organizations is not that you run like lots and lots of businesses, although you might. I use the Trello term organizations for just the different categories in my life. So I have, one kind of grouping of boards for my day job, Club Pilates. I have another grouping for my family where we have like personal thing, our personal, account information or meal planning lists, which I'll talk about in a little bit, et cetera, just kind of personal to-do lists. And then I have my business. I forgot to update it. I haven't updated it since I changed my business name to Wealthy Boss, so that should read Wealthy Boss, but the boards are all the same. Now, another great thing about Trello is that you can actually, within these organizations, and why it makes sense to kind of group them, not only for your own brain, but say within only this organization, I can invite different members. I can invite, say a virtual assistant to come in, or maybe a contractor or freelancer that I have doing some work for me to come in and access the same list. So it's not just to-do lists I keep on here. For example, I keep like my content calendar, what I'm going to be speaking on, that type of thing, and any type of notes that I might have in there. This is today's, right? So what helps inform where all of the to-do lists themselves come into these different organizations is that quarterly retreat that I mentioned. So that I keep a separate kind of running board for whatever my quarterly goals are. Now I break them down. I'm not going to get too far because I could spend probably just an hour on how I do my quarterly planning goals, and we don't have time for all that right now. Although if you want a separate video on how to do that, just let me know. But this is kind of what feeds into everything else that I do. Once a quarter, I put basically my big goals in different areas of my life, whether it's spiritual goals, most of them are related to my business. But say here, we had just moved into our new house, so I knew that I wanted to work on certain home projects, but not be completely overwhelmed. So I kind of broke it down, made it manageable. And you can kind of see I was kind of keeping a running list. So we've done, everything for the house that I wanted to this quarter, except the nursery I haven't quite gotten to yet. So all of these, then I start to break down into one, what I call push goal. So that is taken from Chalene Johnson's Smart Success program. And I use that to really determine, which of these big goals, which one goal should I do first that will help make the others easier, or maybe it's just most important to me that quarter. So again, I won't go into super detail about this process in this video, but if you'd like me to do a whole separate video just on how I do my quarterly planning retreat, certainly let me know. But then I break down these goals into smaller goals. And you can use labels. So, I use like the orange label I use for my business. You can click on labels. Looks like I have a duplicate one here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out while we've got it. So, you can see, and I also even have like a pink label for my top 3 when we get to my daily to-do list that you can designate the top 3 of just each day. Which we'll get to in a minute when we look at my daily to-do list. So just so you know, this is kind of how I group things according to my big goals. And then once I've identified my big goals, the main goal that I'm going to be spending the most time on each day, or make sure that I at least hit it every single day, starts here. So that's what I usually start with in terms of breaking down the different tasks related to it. So for example, well, there's just so much good stuff we still have to get to. I'm just going to have to do a separate video on how I do my quarterly planning retreat. But I do have a resource for you at the end to get started with kind of the high level stuff. Okay, so from here, I break down each of those big goals for the quarter into little teeny tiny action steps, like 20 minutes or less. Again, this is pulled from Smart Success, the Smart Success system. And so these kind of become my feeder goals. So these are my feeder boards. And this, again, these are personal, these are business, primarily business, but I try to include a couple of personal, maybe some spiritual goals, anything that can be broken into a to-do list. Not everything can. And then I add due dates to them, okay? So it has a great feature in here that you can select a due date. You can even select the time of day. I don't usually get real prescriptive about the time of day, but you can. You can also sync it. I think it has a couple of different calendar options you can sync it with. I haven't quite gotten that advanced yet, but it does have that if you'd like. Okay, so these are like my main feeder goals. I do actually keep a separate running list for my day job. I probably should put, I don't know, because those are just things you have to do no matter what, like whether or not they're kind of revolving around big quarterly goals. So I keep like a master task management list in here for staffing. And so again, I'll do the same thing with these during my day job. I always have Trello pulled up at my day job, so I can attach. Obviously, this is past due, but I can attach like due dates to them. So here's where it gets really cool. I have a whole separate board, and I'm going to recommend that whatever other feeder boards you have, however you like to organize those other areas of your life, I recommend that you have one board that you call, technically I should say that this is called this week, but this is like your to-do list. This is what everything else feeds into. So these are separated I like to separate them into 4 lists actually. So you can do that just by creating, adding a list, right? And so you can just name the list like new list, and then you can add a card, which is like a virtual sticky card. And Trello itself has a lot of really good tutorials. So I am less interested in like letting you know the nuts and bolts of how to make something happen, like how to add a new board, how to move things around. Because Trello already has plenty of resources for that. I'm more interested in showing you how, like, my system what I actually use it to accomplish. But you can add, again, those date lists, or those due dates, those labels. You can even add a checklist, which I use for my meal planning, which I'll tell you about in a little bit. So every week, ideally, I'm not perfect with this. I'm going to delete that because I don't need it. Every week, then I look at my other feeder boards, so my 90-day goals, and I actually have something that reminds me to go through this process, which is, so if this, then that, so ifttt.com. It's both a desktop app as well as a mobile app. And again, I'm not going to go real nitty gritty into the details of it, because you can learn how to create new applets through the app itself. It has some great tutorials. But I do want to let you know that it has an applet that will sync with Trello. So I can actually set a notification that every Monday that I actually create a new to-do list item in Trello that reminds me to look at all of my different feeder boards. Now, the purpose of looking at all these different feeder boards is, remember those deadlines that we attach to things? Well, I can now go to the menu. I can filter the cards just in that board. So say just my 90-day goals by May 31st board, or my Club Pilates task management board for my day job. And I can filter by due in the next week. All right. Now, because I'm a few days out of these of this quarter, and I need to create my new goals for the new quarter, it looks like I don't have anything due this week. Let's give you another example. Maybe this will be a better example. So I'm going to filter cards by those that are due in the next week. And holy moly, I did not. Oh, it's because I already did it. So I already moved these over. So if there were anything, let me just show you, for example, new to-do item. Okay, then I'm going to give it a deadline. Say it's due. Let's just say it's due today. Right? So now when filtering's on, it's just going to show me that one item that is due this week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that card, and I'm going to move it over from this feeder board where I've got all these different areas of my life that all have their separate, disparate to-do lists. And I'm going to move that over, because I know that has to get done this week, to my board labeled today, which again, maybe should be labeled this week. But remember, within that board, we have those separate lists. So unless I know that I want this done today, which maybe I do because I see that it's actually due within the next day. So I can either move it straight to today's board, but what I recommend is that you just have to do this on a weekly basis. So you move it over to this week. That way, every morning you don't have to sort through and find out what you have to do that day. Just up to you. I kind of like to have it on the horizon. So then I go to today. And then I have this week. So it's, this is what I live off with, every single day, every single hour, essentially, that I'm in front of a computer. I'm checking back in with this main screen. So I don't have to toggle between all these different screens. I've already run the filtering. I already know what's due today for all of my different goals and things that I have, in my day job, in my business, in my personal life. I have a reminder that I set up through if this then that every week to remind myself to set up a time to go grocery shopping and just review, my quick email or my quick meal planning list. So then this is all I can live with. So I just have, these 4 lists. And really, this is the only one I care about today. Now, if I'm waiting on something, or if I haven't quite completed a task, then I will move it to doing. Usually I reserve this for things like, I'm waiting on a response from someone else to be able to complete. So all that kind of like in a holding list. And then because it feels so good to mark things off a to-do list, which is, I know why you're so attached to your sticky notes, I just drag them over. So you can drag these between each list. And so this morning, for example, I had to record Rio's monthly coaching video for Boss Body System. and I just did it right before this video. So I drag it over to the done list. It just makes me feel really good when you see that nice long list of everything you've done. And then I just archive all of the cards in this list once a week to clear that out so that doesn't go on, infinitely, week after week. So I hope that gives you an overview of how I basically operate every day and make sure that all these things that need to happen. A couple other little things, like every day I try to say something I'm grateful for. So I just kind of keep that up at the top. And when I'm reviewing my to-do list in the morning, I try to like update it with something that I'm grateful for, kind of have a little mindfulness moment there. And then again, I use this for managing content calendars. So it's not just your to-do list. Again, I kind of keep my content calendar in here. I keep references to, my color codes, kind of just anything that I might need to remember or document. I come back to that. Again, all of these episodes for the Wealthy Boss episodes, I keep documentation for, so that I'm just doing these things ahead of time so that when it comes down to like that day, I don't have to sit and think, oh gosh, what do I need to do today? I would rather have it all documented. That way it's out of your head and you just need to rely on the system rather than on your memory, which as good as your memory is, I bet the system is better. Okay, I think there's one or two things. And actually, to remind myself again of what I wanted to share with you today, I actually have it documented in here. So let me make sure I've hit everything. Quarterly goals, weekly prompt, content week. Oh yeah, so I mentioned about my content calendar. I actually, again, using the app, If This Then That, I set a reminder the first week of every month, unless it happens to be like a month that I'm launching one of my premium programs in. Then I try my best to set aside 1 week, the first week of every month, to create the new like ongoing content. So, maybe that's outlining, all the upcoming blog posts and weekly Wealthy Boss episode topics. I'll at least write out what the topics are. I'll try to come up with an outline for them. If I'm really on top of things, I might go ahead and create the blog post for it and just keep it as an unpublished draft. I always do a video on top of it as well. So of course that piece has to typically be done. Usually I do those live. So I just set aside time to do that. But whatever I can do, to try to draft the weekly emails and MailChimp, I try to at least put the skeletons of them together so that I'm not starting from scratch every week when I send out new content for my list. So that is really helpful too. So again, you're not just scrambling each day thinking like, oh crap, it's time to do this again. You really feel like it's kind of on an automatic system, which it is. Okay, before we get to meal planning, I wanted to make sure that so I told you about dragging everything over. And obviously, like, this is just case in point of how I use Trello to keep myself organized and remember what I need to do. Okay, and then just real briefly, again, each of these items, like each of these personal items, business items, planning items could deserve their whole video. So whatever you want to see more of or want me to go into more depth with, please let me know. I'm just trying to give you a feel for like the overview of all you can do with it. So I did just want to briefly, because this is so helpful for me too, touch on my meal planning. So I do I've created a system that I actually have a program for that I open up registration for a couple times a year called Meal Planning Mastery. So with that, we get super organized. It's essentially like just doing a content batching, but for your meals. So both in the way that you plan for your meals and in the way that you cook them. It's basically just doing the work up front and streamlining so that you're not having to come up with new grocery lists every single week or new meal plans every single week. And then 2, you don't even have to cook every day. You just cook like once a week. It's awesome. I've spent a lot of time perfecting the system, but I just, right now I can do separate trainings on that. I do separate trainings on that. So, I can put a link too if you want to get on the waiting list for when I do webinars around healthy meal planning. But just to give you an idea, I also use Trello for my meal plans and my grocery lists. So just as a super, super quick sneak peek, I will put a link to the recipe that I'm going to be using and I batch everything. So again, that's kind of probably a separate video, or come to my healthy meal planning webinar when I offer it at some point if you'd like. And then I list out all the ingredients that I'm going to need for that item. So that over here I have like my master shopping list. That's just things I need every week. I can duplicate that for, whatever I need for that particular week. Say, if it's a weird week and I'm only going to be cooking, I don't know, maybe I'm cooking twice that week instead of once because we're having company or, what have you. And then you can actually pull in that checklist from the one that you just created. So you can, again, everything just feeds into one master list, whether it's your content, whether it's your meals, whether it's what you need to do for your day job. The whole goal here is to try to keep your mind as simple and focused and on track as possible. And, I admit I'm not perfect at following this, but when I am better about it, I feel so much more calm because I just, I set out the to-do lists ahead of time. I batch what I even need to do ahead of time. And then it's just a matter of sorting things by deadline. Of course, you have to, things come up, you have to change, you have to be nimble. But Trello really allows for that because you can drag things back and forth. You can always change the deadlines on them, right? Which is why I've become a big advocate of organizing your life digitally. So I hope this is helpful for you. There was one final resource I wanted to provide you with, and that is a special printable for an quarterly planning retreat agenda. So remember, I mentioned at the beginning of this training that really what feeds, like how I even know what to put on my to-do list and how I even know what needs to happen for all of those big goals that I have each quarter, that happens on a quarterly basis with a ton of strategy and a ton of then just nitty gritty of breaking things down into just really single, like 20-minute tasks that really build up my whole quarter. So if you want just the nitty gritty of how I even organize a planning retreat, I make sure it's fun. I do a lot of self-care with it since that's what my whole business is about and that's what I'm about. I make it fun. I make it glamorous. I make it in a beautiful setting. But if you'd like to maybe start your own planning retreat and you don't really know where to get started, I suggest that you start with my personal planning retreat agenda. It'll give you some resources. It'll give you an idea of how I break down, say self-care and relaxation versus work. It's really broken down into an ideal ratio so that your brain can handle it and you're going to be super productive, but also feel, relaxed and energized at the same time. So you can find this by going to wealthyboss.com/retreat. Again, that's Wealthy Boss, and wealthy is spelled WELL, wealthyboss.com/retreat. Grab your free printables so that you can start feeling more organized in your business and your personal life. And, through that, be able to better maintain your energy as an entrepreneur, because in those early years, you face so many daunting tasks. So much is required of your energy. Whatever you can do to stay organized, both in your business and your personal life, just means that you're going to be that much more effective. You're going to be more productive. You're going to be able to sustain the pace that it takes as an entrepreneur to build your business up in those early years. And then you're going to be in the frame of mind so that you're better able to enjoy all of that hard work and that life that you're working to create. That's all for now. I will see you next time.